Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to The Black Tower Show. I am your host, Nathan Ford. Jake Fox is here. We're in BC Studios, broadcasting 1310 WRSB, 1590 WASB, Canandaigua, Rochester, Brockport, upstate New York, and it's getting cold, Jake. It's getting cold out there.
Oh, it's cold.
You got to put your coat on, but it's warm inside BC Studios because we got work to do. Susan Lindauer, back on the show again. You need to know about what she's doing. She's doing great work. American journalist, anti-war activist, all right? 9/11 whistleblower, Susan Lindauer. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much. You all know that I was the second non-Arab American ever indicted on the Patriot Act.
And I was subjected...
Yeah. That has become a major concern as we move to a surveillance state. And what exactly is happening with the Patriot Act and the NDAA? And a lot of Americans, Edward Snowden was a tipping point. Whatever you think of him politically, like whether you like whistleblowers or you think that we should keep our mouths shut and protect the government. Some people in Washington are very, very. I live in Washington D.C. and in the whole world, most of you out there oppose this sort of heavy surveillance. But where I live, people do this for their living. This is their bread and butter. This is how they pay the bills. And what you see is that the surveillance state is an economic force. It is about it's a jobs program is what it's become. Mm-hmm. And people are afraid of cutting that back because they'll lose, this has been a major source of growth, of economic growth in the government. And literally, it's a jobs program.
So go into that a little bit deeper there. How is that the surveillance state is sort of propping up the economy?
Well, I'll tell you something. We have seen over 100. Let's see, internationally, there was 124 billion phone calls monitored by the NSA in a 1-month period. And seriously, 124.8 billion in a 1-month period. And all of those calls have to be supervised, they have to be scrutinized, they have to be cataloged, they have to be, and yes, you have software and computers that are doing that, but you have somebody who watches the computers, you have somebody who does the technical work, you have somebody who has to go through and screen the sensitive calls that use, words that are, catchwords like terrorism or something like that. Ooh, we just landed on somebody's list at NSA. And so this has become an economic force. Right. And what's a force majeure, as I call it, because it's a catastrophe for freedom in this country. And people have, but it's very important because when I was arrested, people still said, oh, that's you. That could not ever be me. And the Patriot Act has secret charges. I got hit with secret charges, secret evidence. The government was never required to show any evidence that I actually broke the law. They were allowed to just make a generalized statements that I broke the law, but we said, okay, put it up, show your cards. Oh no, we're not going to do that.
You wanted peace.
No way. They tried to say I took $10,000 from the Iraqi government. I was like, oh really? Really? Prove it. Where? Where's the bank account? Where's the money? Show me the money, baby. And they're like, well, aren't you just going to fall on your sword for George Bush? I was like, never in this lifetime.
You have gone
How
through...
did you get the wrong person? You picked the wrong person if you think you got a patsy in me. I said, you want to do battle? We're going to do some swashbuckling. You're going to go into court with an empty gun, and I've got an RPG launcher on my back. And so what they said was that then I would be deprived of the right to a trial. And I laugh because this is it's too heartbreaking not to laugh. It's not funny. People, this is not funny. It is not funny. I was locked up on Carswell Air Force Base in prison and for a year, and threatened with indefinite detention for up to 10 years with no right to a hearing. Okay, now try to imagine this. The government has no evidence against you, because you know this because you've challenged them and you've said, okay, show your cards. Where is it? Oh, no, we can't show you. You'll have to just take our word for it. No. You're going to have to present this at trial. We demand proof. And I'm not playing the little good girl, the little victim game. See, if I had been an Arab, what they do frequently is Arab Americans or foreigners, they tell you, look, you're going to be convicted anyway. You might as well just plead guilty. Everyone's going to look at you. If you're a young Arab man, they're going to look at you and see jihadi, even if you're not. It doesn't matter. But I am a white blonde woman with socks and tennis shoes. I look like a soccer mom, and you're going to hit me with the Patriot Act, and that's why They fought desperately and viciously to stop me from having a trial. And what they did, and it's not funny, and you shouldn't. I laugh because I know that I'm strong and I am a survivor. I'm very confident in who I am, and I know my values, and I stand by my values, and I take responsibility for my choices. So if you were going to convict me, then what I told the judge, and they did not like this at all. The judge liked it, but the prosecutor, it scared everybody else. They said, if you think you have evidence, you absolutely have the right to bring charges against me, but I have the right to a trial. I have the right to face a jury of my peers, and I have the right to beat the living daylights out of you. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. You go into court with a case like this, and I will beat you to you will be crawling out of that courtroom every day. And I will never let this go. And for 5 years, they refused. What they did was they declared me, quote, incompetent to stand trial. And this is very frightening, because the basis, and during this time, for a year of this time, I was locked up in prison. And even when I was released, I was forced to, I was treated like a guilty criminal and forced to have like probation meetings, and not probation meetings. It was pre-trial, because I was never convicted of anything. So for 5 years, I had to go into the court services and make appearances and just, and say, yes, I haven't fled the country, I haven't revoked my bail, I haven't done my broken bail or anything like that. But they declared me incompetent, and this is very important because people get confused on the legal reason they did it. And this is very important. They declared that, quote, my desire to prove my innocence was so strong that I showed I was not capable of respecting the gravity of the charges against me or the possibility that I might be convicted. So long as I continued to insist on my innocence, I must be considered mentally unsound. But if I agreed to a guilty plea, then I would show that my behavior had been corrected and my mental imbalance had been cured. So, as soon as I agreed to accept a guilty plea, I would show that I was cured of my mental defect.
We're talking to Susan Lindauer on the Black Tower Show, 9/11 Whistleblower. But the real truth is that you were saying things about the attack on 9/11 before it happened. You were warning people. You warned your friends not to go to New York during those times, and you knew about it, and they were shutting you up because you knew about what was going to happen.
And the hearings, when I said I wanted a hearing, I demanded the right to call my 9/11 witnesses into court that would verify that we gave those warnings throughout the spring and summer of 2001, and that I had told them that the attack would occur in late summer, early fall. In August, I told them the attack was imminent and they should stay out of New York. in the southern part of New York. I identified the World Trade Center and the MO of airplanes crashing into the towers. Now, for all of you who are 9/11 buffs, you know that 9/11 was a controlled demolition. So let me be very clear on this, because people always ask, and those who know 9/11 really well get it, but because we're dealing with the general public, please bear with me. 9/11 was a cover and deception operation. That means the airplanes were like a magician's trick. All the public's eyes are on the airplanes flying across the waters, striking those towers, but by themselves, that would never have been sufficient to bring down the towers. In order to bring down the towers, there had to be a controlled demolition, which meant that explosives had to be positioned in the towers in advance by somebody who knew that the cover operation would be the airplanes flying into the towers. That's why 9/11 was an inside job, even though I do believe in the quote, and this is again for those who are 9/11 buffs. You're talking about the FBI has a history, and in this case it was CIA, Mossad, international intelligence, let's leave it at that. Let's just say international intelligence recruited assets and hijackers. The international intelligence, CIA, Mossad, positioned assets to guide the hijackers in what they were doing. The U.S. assets probably thought that they were doing an exercise and that they were going to, facilitate this thing so that they could make an arrest. And I doubt that they had any idea that they had just been given the GPS coordinates that could be plugged in to smash into the World Trade Center. Even that statement is controversial. There's some people who don't even believe there were airplanes there, or they believe they were drones. I do believe that this was a CIA asset operation. And if there were a few hijackers, then they were being monitored and scrutinized and financed and trained and guided in every minute detail by this cabal. And so people say right there, they're like, oh my God, our government couldn't do that. Well, let me tell you, when I demanded the right to a hearing, I wasn't even allowed to have a trial at this point, but I knew a hearing would suffice. The judge in my case, Michael Mukasey, was also hearing the insurance claim for Larry Silverstein's, I think it was $7 billion on the World Trade Center. And so my attorney, my public defender, would cross paths going in and out of court with Larry Silverstein's high-powered, high-paid Wall Street, corporate attorneys, and they were like, don't let her testify, because my testimony all by itself, my hearing, would have nullified Larry Silverstein's claims, that because he had acquired the insurance in July of 2001 at the urging of people, by people who knew that the towers were going to be hit. And so that's insurance. It just nullifies the insurance claim right there. If you cannot be paid. If you know that there's going to be an attack, you cannot be paid for it.
And Silverstein's quoting, saying, I remember getting a call from the fire department commander. I said maybe the smartest thing to do is to pull it. And they made that decision to pull. And then we watched the building collapse.
7. Building 7. That's what they did. And so it's like everyone always says, and it's a very good campaign. The Rethink 9/11 campaign focuses on Building 7, and here was what is it? The wind is supposed to blow us down? No, the wind. The ground just unsettled itself and just like poof, it dropped into dust. No, this had been pre-laid with explosives, just like the other towers. And they may have thought they were going to have 3 airplanes hit the World Trade Center, and oops, there was only 2.
Is that the same, the judge that was presiding over your case, is that the same Michael Mukasey that got promoted to be Attorney General?
Yes, exactly.
Well, he got a
everyone who everyone who helped the Bush administration cover up 9/11 got rewarded. everybody got rewarded. And those of us who stood up against the Bush administration got viciously attacked. And, it's still to this day, some people say, that I sound cheerful or chirpy or pert. I learned to have a sense of humor in prison, where you could either cry and weep because it was so awful. It was just so incredibly terrible. I am a proud activist. I do not see myself as a victim. I was victimized by the government in this case, but I'm a fighter. I'm a real hardcore fighter, I think. I try to be. I like to see myself that way. And the fact that the government could do this to me when I have personal resources, education, beliefs, strong convictions, a knowledge of the Constitution, wow, I was prepared for this. My whole life had been like, if you were going to take out anybody, if they can do this to me, then the Patriot Act really is the evil weapon. Its arsenal is deadly for democracy, and Americans need to be a lot more afraid than they are. And so I'm glad to see that Edward Snowden we're reaching a tipping point. His revelations are not new. Yes, there's been massive NSA surveillance for a decade. Shh, that's a tiny little dog, a Maltese. She's excited. She wants to join the conversation. But the NSA has been doing this for a decade, and Mr. Tice spoke about it.
Thomas.
Yeah, but 10 years ago, somebody had joked that if Edward Snowden had watched 60 Minutes when he was in high school, he could have spared himself the disappointment and the dislocation and the trouble. But the problem is that Americans are reminded, and then they go back to sleep, and they go back to comfort zones, and they forget. And Edward Snowden has performed a valuable service by pushing this in front of the public, because now at this stage, people are starting to say, they're starting to realize that the government is afraid of the people. And we have moved so far away from our original founding fathers' value system.
Yeah. I think it is interesting, the dialogue that is happening, because it is so crucial and it is so pertinent when I'm having a dialogue with my mother and my sister about what the rights of the people are, and having the right to not be spied on is something that is out in the ethos right now. It is something that is being discussed, and I think that is a step in the right direction. I wonder if there could be that dialogue about 9/11, about if that could be in the public sphere, an actual criticism about the facts given to the people about the case, which are clearly, veiled in mystery and all these sort of things.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could have that same kind of dialogue about 9/11.
I wish we could. I do. I wish we could.
But
I don't know that we can. I don't know that we can. I mean, I wish we could, and I think that, I think that, well, you know what? I take that back. I think we do. Among those people who care about 9/11, we do know about this. And I think that more Americans, I think we have reached a tipping point where the American people know that the official story is wrong. They may not agree on what's right. They may not agree on all the details of what's right, but more and more people, we've reached a strong point where at least people are aware that there is talk of a controlled demolition. Nobody's surprised anymore. When you tell them the facts about 9/11, what really happened, people have already heard this, and so it is seeping into their consciousness, and that's very important, because 9/11 was the turning point for all of the, these civil rights in the United States, all of the police state, all of the wars, the bankruptcy of the United States, the destruction of the middle class, the push for Halliburton and the defense contractors. We really have done we've done a lot of good, I think.
I think
that
the dialogue that I would like to have is about false flag attacks. We've talked about it on the show throughout history.
Yes.
Jake
yes.
we were just talking about earlier on in the show about you
Mm-hmm.
could take all of these events throughout history,
Yes.
and you could make the argument that most of them were false flag attacks. That this is actually a tactic that governments use. Why can't that be out in the ether? Why can't
that actually is becoming known now, because it's actually there's a phrase for it. It's called Operation Gladio.
Oh, yeah,
and that is Gladio, and this is something that originated in it dates back to Europe and Italy right after the Nazis, when the Italian fascists who had been tied to Mussolini wanted to defame and demoralize the left, the socialists. They wanted to depict them as crazies and violent people, and therefore cause the middle class, the ordinary people who were tired of World War II, to pull away from the left and to stay in the arms of the fascists and to stay with the conservatives. So they organized, assassination. The government, the fascists, the pre-government, the conservatives in this case. And again, I hate to say, it's not about conservatives versus liberals. It's just a matter of history that it was the fascists who did it. But they organized terrorist attacks inside Libya, assassinations, roadside bombings, anything to destabilize the country. And then they blamed it on dissidents who opposed the law and order. And they said, anybody who's opposed to law and order, anybody who's opposed to our fascist agenda, they're the ones who are the threat. And what you see throughout history, and then that spread throughout Europe, and that NATO was instrumental in this. And they applied this in France, they applied it in Germany, and you see it in Operation Northwoods here in the United States, where they tried to use plan attacks against U.S. airliners that would be blamed on Cuba so that they could provoke an attack on Castro.
Actually,
so that's called Operation Northwoods, everybody. You got to check that out. And Operation Gladio is the strategy. And so this is what you see over and over again, false flag operations, usually done by government authorities who are very powerful and very wealthy, and they've got the mechanisms, they've got the intelligence, apparatchik, the Stasi mentality that they can. They've got the will and the resources. These are not poor people who are doing this. This is the rich and the elite. This is the powerful and elite, and that's what is important. You can't do this on a shoestring. This is never a lone gunman. In order to pull this off, you have to dismantle all the regular protections that would kick in. Like in 9/11, we kept warning about 9/11. I personally telephoned the Office of Attorney General John Ashcroft and the Office of Counterterrorism at the Justice Department, and I requested an emergency broadcast alert across all federal agencies, because we identified the World Trade Center as the target of an airplane hijacking attack, and that the airplanes would be used as some sort of aerial bomb to strike the World Trade Center. It was very precise. We knew exactly what was going to happen. But
how did you
ordinarily,
know exactly what was going to happen?
My CIA handler and I had discussed it. We talked about it practically every meeting we had throughout the summer of 2001. And so I made those phone calls in early August, approximately August 6th to August 8th. Those 3 days. It was August 6th to August 8th. And I said, and I told them exactly what we thought. I asked for any emergency fragment of intelligence that would help us identify more actionable intelligence on the attack so that we could stop it. Well, ordinarily that would kick in, and everybody would mobilize, and we'd fix it, and we'd solve the problem. We'd get what we wanted. But in this case, John Ashcroft himself said to his staff, those CIA people, they keep talking about that darn airplane hijacking. Just ignore it. Don't do anything. I don't want anybody to take any action on this. And this was a month before 9/11. Why didn't anybody know that? Because after 9/11, the government wanted to beef up FBI funding at the Justice Department, and they wanted to hire a lot more staff and give everybody big raises, and they didn't, this was about operational mission crawl. And so the FBI was like, we don't want anybody to know that we blew this for America. The CIA was the one telling us to get help, was asking for help, and the FBI refused because of the stupid Attorney General, John Ashcroft, who really should have been disgraced in shame. He should have been pilloried in Congress on Capitol Hill in hearings. I mean, this is just this is unforgivable that he did this. And yet here we have a situation where they protect the bureaucracy. So
we're talking to 9/11 whistleblower Susan Lindauer on the Black Tower Show. If you don't know her story, she was arrested, imprisoned without trial, declared mentally incompetent. I was discussing with Jake, by the way, that if the government says that you're mentally incompetent, that usually means that you're probably the sanest person that you actually know. So that's like a real badge of honor.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that.
Now, you were communicating with the Iraqi intelligence service. What was the work that you were doing? Was it centered around peacekeeping? What was the nature of your work with the CIA?
I had been a back channel throughout the 90s to Libya and Iraq at the United Nations, and I had meetings with senior diplomats and ambassadors in both of those countries, and others, in fact, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, Hezbollah, anti-Hezbollah at that point because they were at war with Israel. But now I'm not anti-Hezbollah now. But I was dealing with all Arab countries on terrorism, and that was our specialty. And even during the sanctions, I started the Lockerbie negotiations with Libya, and that's how I got into the whole anti-terrorism thing. Even during sanctions, it was necessary to keep a door open, an ear open, because we needed the Iraqis and the Libyans to pass intelligence to us on things that were going on. We needed a channel of communication. So I provided that channel, which then, of course, under indictment, that made me even more of a threat because I knew all the details of everything that really happened. Most people are surprised to hear that there was a peace option on the table with Iraq that would have solved the entire crisis without ever firing a shot. Iraq was offering the United States weapons inspections with no conditions, an FBI task force that would go into Baghdad with authority to conduct terrorism investigations and make arrests. Iraq was offering preferential contracts to the United States for telecommunications, healthcare, hospital equipment, pharmaceuticals, transportation. They offered to purchase 1 million American-manufactured automobiles every year for 10 years. Oil, we were going to have, can you imagine Detroit? Huh. And oil, we were going to have, like, we were going to have, like, we were going to have oil where we would have the, they were not going to take contracts from France or Russia. And some countries had already gotten these contracts, but we were going to be in the mix. We were also the United States was also going to have contracts, and they promised to buy, to make a priority of U.S. oil equipment and pipeline reconstruction purchases, pumping stations reconstruction. And the irony is that the war and the sanctions propagated by the Republican Party destroyed the oil infrastructure of Iraq, so we cannot get the oil out now. Even though we seem to, which has contributed to higher oil prices. Iraq is pretty much lost as an oil-producing nation because of what we've done. And if we had done it the other way, we would have been able to access that oil. But now it's cost prohibitive because even if they rebuild it, they can't. They cannot afford to. And if they did afford it, they'd have to pay a lot more money for it. It would not be cheap. We'd pay at the pump.
So what's the end game here then? Why did we do this?
Oh, dumb. It was incredibly stupid. It's one of the stupidest things that was ever done.
What's the strategic, value something like that?
Well, that's the thing. There is none. Now there is none. Now it's recognized that that this was a calamity. It was a catastrophe. Iran is on the rise. China and Russia has been resurrected from the dead. China has taken over from the United States as the world's superpower. We are bankrupt. And the middle class is just trashed, and it's all because of these wars. People are sometimes surprised that I'm so passionate when I say that I love the United States. I have never believed in American exceptionalism, but I believe in the values, in the aspiration of what America hoped we could be, what we wanted, what we hoped we could work to achieve about ourselves. And I think that the values that we have, even if we never really got to embody them perfectly, and we didn't. We never embodied these things perfectly. But they're still such important the symbols around the world that it's worth being, a little nostalgic about them. I fear for what's coming in this country. I've been saying for the past year that people have been saying to me, well, now you've published your book and, what are you doing right now? I'm like, and I've been saying for about the past year, I am saying goodbye to my country. I am enjoying the last beautiful days when our country is glorious and free, before the panic starts, before things really fall apart. I want to feel every moment of this. I want to know. I want to feel the sunshine when we still have this. Our country is ours, because when it goes, it will be gone.
Well,
and we are so close. We are so close. If there is, there are two possibilities, of course, two ways of going. I mean, here's the thing: we can make a choice. We will make a choice. If we take the easy choice, then at the next economic crisis, the next financial shakeup on Wall Street, if, God forbid, please don't let this happen, there's a terrorist attack, but eventually there will be, like a major terrorist attack. There will be a major terrorist attack eventually. And it may be 5 years from now, it may be 3 years from now, it could be 6 months from now, we don't know. But it will happen, God forbid, and when it does, there's going to be, a move towards, a police state. And I really fear, I do not own any guns. I know that a lot of people do. I have dogs and cats. So I always tell people, if anybody tries to rob me, my little dachshund buddy bear will bite them. He'll scare them away. He'll chase them off, because he weighs about 12 pounds, but dachshunds are very ferocious, protective of their mommies. And my doggies will, you heard Bella Bella's my little Maltese from Lebanon. And anyway, I'm kind of joking, because I know a lot of Americans have guns, but I was visited by the Secret Service in May, and they wanted to know if I own any guns. And there is a list of Americans. They wanted to know what organizations I belong to, what radio hosts I listen to. And I said, well, I really don't see that as any of your business. I listen to as many as I can find. I talk to as many people as I can find. I'm not afraid of the American people. Apparently you are. And I kind of smiled. But I think that there are lists. I know there are lists. And I think that we should all be grateful for what we have right now. And we all need to be merciful of each other. When this trouble starts, there's going to be people who try to be predatory. They're going to be afraid and insecure, and they're going to try to grab. They're going to do things that they would never have done otherwise. They're going to say, well, I better grab it before somebody else does. And if somebody's in a weak position, they're going to try to steal from them, I think. And that's my kind of hang up, my fear, my paranoia. And how about if we just take care of each other instead? How about if we think like a community and try to work together to help each other out? A little bit here, a little bit there. Give each other a break and help each other get through this. Because if we take that approach and work together, we can make it.
Lindauer, American journalist, anti-war activist, and author. And there are multiple things happening at the same time. I always talk about how it is such a tragedy that we are going after each other, and that the sense of community seems to be deteriorating in our cities. And we live in Rochester, New York, and the poverty level here, I believe that we're the 13th poorest city in America. 1 in 4 children live in poverty, and so I'm become kind of
that's terrible.
It's just kind of deteriorated. And I do believe that we've talked to Chris Hedges, who's a journalist he wrote a book.
Days of Destruction, Days of Revolt.
Yeah, and he talks about how a lot of these cities across America are just being decimated. And that's happening at the same time that we are kicking the can down the road as far as our national debt. It's kicking the can down the road as far as going after bankers and not taxing them and not sort of things. It's also happening while there's a race war that's going on where we are just attacking each other. And that's happening there. The school system, school started in September, and kids don't know where they're going to school in Rochester. And so you hear, and so it's hard to kind of put all of these things together. But when you take a step back, it seems that the community that you're talking about is point where we are just going to be individuals at one point, and that's good because individuals can be controlled to some degree. When you're kind of out of the herd, the lost wolf out there, and we're all becoming kind of wolves. We're being scattered in a sense, and I do see that. That's a big picture sort of thing, and I don't want to get too big picture-y, but I see those sort of trends happening, and it is scary.
That kind of push by the government a long time. I mean, and I'm not trying to bash feminism, and I'm not trying to do that, but feminism, Gloria Steinem famously worked for the CIA, and she pushed an agenda that, forced women and women working.
She worked for the CIA, did she?
Yeah, she did. She forced an agenda that, women, and women working is not bad at all, but agenda which, kind of made the family weaker. And, that made, it easier for the government to come in and impose themselves.
Well, the problem is that nowadays we have families that are holding each, men and women each holding 2 or 3 jobs just to survive. And so nobody's watching the kids. And the kids are raising themselves. They're raising themselves on McDonald's and television and keeping up with the Kardashians, and they have this this twisted sense of lack of responsibility, or what do you call it, Xbox? I don't have kids, so they're playing video games all afternoon.
Weapons of mass distraction is what it is, and
weapons of mass distraction. Yes,
occupied while they run away and do these kind of horrible things that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Keep the people illusioned. Keep them watching the Kardashians. And meanwhile, the bankers and the politicians are running away with things. It's not even a conspiracy theory.
Well, the banksters are, I mean, the banksters are grabbing as much as they can and demanding protections and overstepping at pushing the boundaries. And they know that the government is afraid to take them on because they're afraid of collapsing. The government's afraid of collapsing the whole system. So the government is tolerating these horrible abuses they're fraud. It's just consumer fraud. And if we were to put it back in perspective, or not put it in perspective, but put the clamps back down and say, guys, we cannot have unregulated sale of derivatives. You can't trade on your own bank wealth because Jesus, what are you going to do? The whole economy is going to collapse if you do that. There has to be, it used to be that banks were a conservative institution, very stable. They did not overextend themselves on loans and make speculative ventures on Wall Street. The derivative. Whoever invented the derivatives market should be arrested and sent to jail. Frankly, But that's another story. But the point is that we are moving. I think we all know this. I think that it used to be the conspiracy theorists would say, "Oh, watch out! What's ahead?" And now ordinary Americans are saying, "Oh my God, what's happening? What are we going to do?" And so the ordinary sheeple who have been, yeah, oh, I know, not on your show, but all of your audience will know this is true because we all know the sheeple, and we all know that they are just, it's because of the Black Tower show and radio like yours that we're busting the silence barrier, but even those people who have been ignorant for a long time, they're waking up, they're becoming uncomfortably, their sleep has been uncomfortably dislocated.
Susan,
you know what I mean? They can't pretend anymore.
Well, I mean, you wonder, we were talking about in Iceland, they just went right to the bank. I mean, will it get to the point where we just have to storm the castle at some point,
Yes.
We have to go right to the source here.
Yeah, that's right.
You were talking about a looming economic event off the air. What do you see that's in store for us?
Well, I think the Black Tower audience will know know exactly what this is. We're looking at the collapse of the dollar. And it's, currency talk makes people snooze and they go, it's like CNBC stuff and Bloomberg and you're like, oh, I don't want to hear this. But the collapse of the dollar as a world reserve currency and the flight of gold to Asia and China, is very disturbing because we're moving to a hyperinflationary system that the world has been propping up U.S. Spending, and we're not producers of anything anymore. We are purchasers, and we're not. We don't have any income to buy, and no one's going to give us anything anymore. So we're looking at a shortage of goods that's coming that we won't be able to purchase. We won't be able to create because we don't have the machine infrastructure, like the factory production capacity, and we're going to have to import these goods, and we're not going to be able to do it. Our dollar is going to be worthless, and so we'll have to spend. It's a huge inflationary move, is what's happening.
What I see for the future is, I see a lot of American and European Union debt. I see a lot of American and European Union gold reserves, and I see a lot of Asian countries holding a lot of American and European debt. So in the future, I see a lot of that gold shipping over to Asia.
Yes, absolutely. It's already happening. They're moving it as fast as they can. China is rapidly buying every and they're not buying gold paper. They are buying gold, physical gold, and they're importing it as rapidly as they can, and that's going to make that means that the Chinese yuan will be a gold-backed currency, which will then have real power and real muscle that the United States has not had forever, and the United States dollar will be, virtually worthless. And then we're going to have to make some. Again, there will be a great, terrifying. I'm scared. A great economic dislocation, and we're going to have to figure out how to produce something, and we're going to have to bring back. We're going to have no money to do it. We're going to have to do it with our finger. Build with our finger, dig the dirt with our fingernails, and we're going to have to build from the bootstrap our way up. And this generation of kids, they're not trained for that. They're very spoiled. We've kind of lost our muscular advantages. You know what I mean? And I worry. I think we're looking at 10 hard years. 10 very hard years.
Yeah, and you also look at India. India is a future because gold is held in such high regard in that society. Indian women hold 11% of the world's gold reserves as jewelry in that country.
Wow.
That's
really?
Yes, that's more than all of the United States gold reserves. In hard economic times, that's all going to be melted down and probably confiscated by the government, I'd imagine. But
yeah, that's what I'm afraid too. I'm afraid of that. Oh God. Oh.
All right. Well, we got a lot of work to do here. That's what we're doing.
That's
here.
Right.
Why we're
That's
talking
right.
To
we're
Susan
doing.
Lindauer. I don't want to give up.
That's why
faith.
we're doing it. That's
I don't
right.
want to give up faith. I think we can tackle Wall Street. I think we can get our communities back in line. And
When
you're talking about like how young the generation now doesn't have the skills, I was thinking like, how valuable it'll be to know how to fix the YouTube app on my iPhone when it collapses.
That's right. That's
I'll
right.
Get in there.
They know they've got some things, but we're going to have to start manufacturing stuff here.
Might be a better skill to have.
Susan's right though. We have lost our machismo, so to speak.
Yeah. America, I was talking to Jake, America used to be a place where the rest of the world stood at awe at how much we worked. They were like, oh my gosh, you guys work like it's and there was this mentality that we had in America that we just worked.
Do you remember a job was our biggest social program? Now, people are screaming about, Social Security, we need our Medicaid.
It was bad.
People used to have jobs,
It was bad. Yeah, you can imagine they were complaining about like all this work that we had to do. now we're like, bring the work back.
Please
work.
bring
I don't
the work
care.
back. Yes.
I'll do anything. Susan Lindauer, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and it's always a pleasure to have these conversations.
Listen, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me on. And like I said, I think that I think that the adjustment is coming. I think it's going to hit us. It's like a tidal wave that we're watching break out over us. But how we handle it, we still have power over that. We still are going to be able to make some choices. And if we take care of each other, if we're just not mercenary and trying to destroy each other, that's what I'm afraid of. Is that like the banksters will continue to try to like steal everybody's homes. We need to find ways for people to stay in their homes even if they're having some hard times. There's going to have to be some choices made, and but we can do that because we'll have reached a fevered pitch where we'll demand it. So anyway, listen, thank you for having me on.
That's right, Susan Lindauer, words of wisdom. Thank you so much, and we'll have you back on the show again soon. You take care.
Excellent. Thanks a lot.
Goodbye now.
Bye-bye.